Welcome to Small Town Tales, a podcast where we hear stories of the paranormal, haunting legends, and all things spirit. Join us as we explore the unknown. Now, here's your host, C.L. Thomas.
All right, this is C.L. Thomas, and you're listening to Small Town Tales podcast. Tonight's guests are Josh Purvis and Shane Pittman with Searchers Believe. Guys, thank you for being on the show.
Hey, thank you so much for having us. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, we're happy to be here.
How did you guys get started in the paranormal, and what brought you guys together?
Oh, why don't you go first, Josh?
Okay. So for me, I think I've always have had a love for just, adventuring and so on and so forth. I've done anywhere from rock climbing to kayaking, whitewater kayaking. I've lived like a million lives at this point, it feels like. But in one of my, I love to travel. My wife now, girlfriend at the time, and I were down in Savannah, Georgia at the Sorrell-Weed house, just doing a tour actually. And we were down in the basement and I was just taking pictures. It was kind of dark down there. Just taking pictures just to take them, with my cell phone at the time. I think it was like a BlackBerry Storm or something crazy like that.
Oh, you're showing your age.
Yeah, we were taking pictures, and we had to actually make our trip back home later on that day, and that's about like a 3-hour trip for us. So I was stopping to get gas, and so she was taking a look at all the photos, and as I'm filling up the car, she says, "Hey, you should take a look at this photo. This one looks really odd." And so, yeah, I took a look at it, and yeah, it looked to have like a silhouette of a woman in a, colonial style dress, just staring out the window. I was like, that's kind of strange. Not knowing anything about the paranormal side, but knowing a lot about like visuals. I threw it in Photoshop and changed a lot of the contrasting and saturation and stuff like that to try and get that image to really like show itself. And I was able to do that. And then I got to digging into, were other people there? Have they seen this before? And apparently that is a haunting there at the Sorrell-Weed house. And so that got me really interested in it, because I was like, I didn't go into it with any kind of angle other than, hey, there's an anomaly in this photo. Let me see what it is. And then it turns out that there's some story credibility to back that up. Fast forward a few short months, I teamed up with an event company, and I was going all over the Southeast at that point, putting on investigations for people, giving, regular people that might be on the fence about the paranormal the opportunity to come out and do investigations and whatnot. And it was during that time period that Shane and I kind of became friends, not because of the events or anything, but just because of the paranormal. He was also doing his own thing at the time. And, we would share stories, and we would go down rabbit holes forever on it. And now, fast forward now, I think 12 years, and here we are still doing it.
Yeah. So for me, how I got started in the paranormal, I had my first experience I was 6 years old, and I had a vivid vision. It was so vivid, like, 31 years later, and I can still remember every detail of it. I mean, it was absolutely amazing. I went to my mother with that, and she kind of walked me through what it was all about. Now, I won't go into details because it would take up the entire show. So then, fast forward to my teenage years, and I was having some experiences, my closet doors in my bedroom closing by themselves, things like that. Once I figured out, I found that there were authors and stuff out there that were writing about this stuff. I was looking for the Hans Holzers, the Warrens, to try to learn more about what was going on in my own personal life. And then whenever I found out that there were engineers and inventors that were actually making things to test the atmosphere, to test different things that was going on personally in my life. I was hooked at that point. So that's kind of what got me into the paranormal and the search of it all, and like Josh was talking about, that's, we teamed up, we had common interests, and here we are now.
So how did you two actually meet?
Well, it was through social media, actually. What happened was, since Josh was a filmmaker and he was doing all of these things, he was wanting to team up and do some short films and do some documentary style things. And he knew that I had my own paranormal team and I was doing my own thing in that space. So he reached out to me and he's like, hey, you want to get involved and try to do something? And I said, sure, because I was always trying to, go forward in anything that we could do, especially in the paranormal. I was thirsty. I was wanting to know more about, life after death and what it all meant. If, what we were communicating with was actually ghosts and spirits, or if it was more than that,
Right.
So our common interest, a friendship grew and like a brotherhood grew, and that's kind of what got us together. And here we are now in this adventure.
Well, we appear to have lost Josh. He dropped off the call. So
oh man.
Yeah.
But so the and this is just me and you talking, but so the vision, it had some religious stuff attached to it, right? And
right.
And it was one of those things where my parents didn't really talk to me about that stuff. It was kind of, I wasn't in church, anything like that. So the vividness of everything was just so surreal to me. And again, I can verbatim tell you exactly what happened in that vision type dream or whatever. And it's something that has stuck with me. I mean, it's still, I don't even know what it means. I don't know, if it was a message of some sort or what it was. I really have no clue. It's just one of those things that's really pushed me further into just, I've got to believe there's more out there, and just what is it? You know what I mean? It's one of those things where it's like, we can all make educated guesses. We can also, be matter of fact about it, but really, honestly, a lot of us don't know much about anything. Like, in the grand scope of things, like, we're just a little speck of sand in this vast universe that, I mean, we haven't even scratched the surface on. We have our version of truth, but what is that? It's right. Just weird. It'll blow your mind just trying to think of it. It's crazy. So how long have you been in the paranormal, like in the paranormal space?
Well, I started seeing ghosts and stuff when I was 2.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So it's been a long, long time. I used to be able to tell my parents different things. I saw my grandmother a couple times and I've never met her. And
wow. All right. So you're intuitive and you classify yourself as a medium or?
I can do that kind of stuff. I'm really good at it, actually, but I don't want to be known for that so much.
Right. I completely understand. I understand. And especially nowadays, there's so much of that going on,
I've been having like intermittent trouble with my cell phone lately I think there's something like very wrong with it, like to the point that I may have to get a new one.
Is it the newest one or is it like a 12?
It's a 12. It's a 12. It's not that old, but
yeah. It's telling you, they're telling you, hey, you need to fork over all that money and buy a new one.
That's what it sounds like. I mean, so the app would just keep freezing. So I was like, well, let me get on my MacBook and see if that works. And then it told me I had to download Chrome, so I had to do that quick.
So I was telling her all of your secrets, like while you were out. So I just hope you don't mind telling her everything.
It's all out there now. Shame on me.
All right, so you want to just pick up where we left off?
Yeah, I can definitely do that. Are you guys both from the South?
Yeah. You can't tell.
Yeah.
So I've lived in Nashville for about 15 years, and I just got to ask this question because I've done paranormal investigations all over the country, and you guys have too, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Do you find that the southern hauntings are a little bit darker than the rest of the country for some reason?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
What are your theories on that?
Go ahead, Josh.
I think a lot of it has to do, we have a, in the South have a very like culturally and religiously rich place here. And on top of that, we have a really dark history with how we've, treated other people, dark history with, just a lot of war, a lot of famine. I think all of that plays a part in it. If you look at Savannah, they rank Savannah at this point like the most haunted place in the country, and there's a lot of reasons behind that. There's just, there's a lot of things that I think really trigger hauntings. It's how you, it's the experiences that were there on that land. And then it's also how you preserve a body and how you, close out that life cycle. And for the South, it didn't really look all that great. There's a lot of mass graves, a lot of people buried on top of people, a lot of people just moved for the sake of moving, a lot of people, buried without representation, not knowing who they are. And I think all of that stuff, causes it. Then you have this huge hoodoo culture down in the coastal areas, which also, and all of that is ultimately due to slavery. And I think all of that plays a part in it.
Yeah.
How about you, Shane?
I completely agree with that. It's one of those things where I think history and the paranormal kind of coincide with each other. They blend together pretty closely. And I think, a lot of the darker hauntings here in the South is because of that history, is because of, what Josh was touching on, the war, the famine, some of the, the things that have gone on that, it's not a proud thing to have happen in the South. There's a lot of stuff racially and culturally that just took place that was not good. And, I think that plays a major part in some of the hauntings here for sure.
So what are some of the dynamics to your team in the way you investigate?
Well, I think a lot of it, and I'll let Josh say his piece in a second, but I think a lot of it has to do with, just being ourselves, for one thing. Even when we're filming and stuff, that's one thing that it's not like we're trying to play characters. It's one of those things where we're genuine, whether it's on camera or off, and we've got like a brotherhood. Like I said before, we're close friends. So we're not afraid to tell each other if we disagree with each other. And I think that dynamic is important, because if everybody, went along and agreed with each other all the time, there's no growth. You're not learning anything. I don't think you're uncovering any level of truth if you don't have those disagreements at times, because that pushes all the parties involved to think, to actually use their brain and say, okay, I'm being challenged here. Is there any validity to this argument, or is there any validity to this statement? And I think it's very important to have that dialogue back and forth. And me and Josh, Josh can tell you too, we disagree with each other all the time. We butt heads all the time like brothers, but I think it's very important, because through that we've grown, in our friendship, in our careers, we've grown because we push each other to be better. And I think that's a part of the dynamic of what we're doing now that just works. And it's been successful so far. So we're going to try to stick with it.
Yeah. Obviously, in this situation, I 100% agree with what Shane said. Shane and I's relationship has been pretty colorful, and especially when it has come to like the paranormal. And for me when we're having to handle the business side of stuff. So like we're back and forth, trying to figure out the best way to approach stuff. That being said, it has really created a really solid foundation for him and I both. Because, you always want to say that you are the type that can learn from other people and stuff. But with Shane and I, we truly have started to do that, and we knew that early on going into it that, hey, this is part of the dynamic, right? Is we can't be afraid to be in disagreements. We can't be afraid to even be mad at each other, but we have to tell each other and we have to work through it. And so on top of that, like Shane says, we're not going to try and like recreate the wheel when we go out to these locations. We go because there's a unique story there. And everybody in the paranormal field needs to acknowledge that if somebody is witnessing something, then it doesn't matter what we think about it. It's real to some capacity. And so we have to go and we have to understand why that instance is happening. Why did that spirit pick that person to show itself to, or why do they show themselves to us? Why do they want to talk to us? And if they are doing that, then we need to really hone in on that to get an understanding of what they're trying to tell us, because it's got to be important. It's, right now for us and the rest of the world, that's a paranormal occurrence. It's an unnatural occurrence. Why is it happening to us when it doesn't happen to so many other people? And instead of running from that idea, we're saying, hey, we don't have all the time in the world to really figure out what's going on here, but we got the here and now to try and let this spirit tell its story and for us to try and understand what's happening.
That's a really good point. A lot of times I feel like these groups are more interested in just being on camera these days and not looking at the stories. And because if there is, like you said before, when a place has such a deep history, I believe there's a lot of stories behind a lot of the hauntings, and it's important to bring those stories forward.
Right. And to touch on that too, with the, just wanting to be on camera, that is an issue right now, with a lot of teams and a lot of people. And I just want to encourage people. It's like, look, it's okay if you want to be on camera. It's okay if you want to do those things, but make sure that you're in it for the right reasons, because what tends to happen is after a while that, being on camera thing fizzles out. And if you don't have any driving force beyond that, I mean, you're in a sense lost, right? I mean, you lose yourself in the whole process of I guess wanting a level of fame or wanting to be on camera, wanting to do all this, that you lose focus on who you truly are, and you lose focus on what you're trying to do. If you are searching for the truth, and this is a passion of yours, then it should be something that you're passionate about, whether the cameras are on or off. It's one of those things that just make sure that you're doing things for the right reasons and not just because you're wanting to be on camera.
Absolutely. If you look at Shane and I, the paranormal is, we've always been interested in that. And, if you take a segue off of that, we've always been interested in creating, and that's not a fabrication. That's not, anything of that nature. This is, I spent probably a good my past 8 years doing cinematography at this point. Shane's done script writing, screenwriting. I've helped him with short films that essentially had nothing to do with the paranormal. And so when we go out, I think there's this huge misconception in the world that, hey, if you are a paranormal investigator, then you need to have a TV show. And it's just not true. There's a ton, and Shane will, reaffirm this. This past year, we've been lucky to get some really good opportunities come our way, but it didn't come without sacrifice by any shape or form. Because it's
a lot of sacrifice.
I mean, my whole past year can be summed up into, trying to create and sell a TV show. And it's tough. And the same for Shane. It's tough. It's not just, hey, let's get a camera and
see what happens. You know, you got to actually create stuff. And then there's like the creative side of it, and there's the business side of how you even get that into the right person's hands. And it's just, I can't even
why are you doing it?
Why are you doing it? You really, really, really do have to have a passion for it to be able to succeed. Someone once asked, you know, what it takes to do that. And I told them, well, these are the steps. And, you know, it was like, you need to write this and film this. And once you do all of that stuff, you need to throw it away and make it better, because that's what it takes. You can't look at a TV show now and say, hey, I want to be these guys. Let me film it like these guys. No, you have to be better than those guys. You know, those guys already exist. And so, you know, you have to give everybody a reason to want to choose you. And it's tough. We're, again, super grateful that we have even made it where we are, and we look forward to the adventures to come with that. But I promise you, and you know, I wish that I could tell that to the whole world, that it is a lot of work. It really is.
Well, I really want to get into some of the places that you guys have been to, but I wanted to ask about some of your theories on ghosts before we do that. Do you believe that spirits can be omnipresent?
I believe it's a possibility, right? Because let's take the technology side, for instance, right? Before all of this was a major thing, ITC and all of that has been going on for the study of it's been going on for quite some time. And if we believe that spirits are energy and we're communicating with some form of energy, then it's not out of the realm of possibility that they can be in more places than one. Even if you go in the religious space of, you know, Christianity, and there's other religions and stuff, Christianity, the Holy Spirit, you know, spirit form that can be everywhere at once, you know, it's God. I just feel like in the paranormal space, it's one of those things where we have to entertain the idea. I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's the gospel truth, but I think that it is a possibility. And that would explain why, you know, there's similar hauntings that's scattered across the country and even overseas. There's similar stories. And of course that can be folklore to a degree, and we have to entertain that as well. But it could also be that it could be a spirit or a group of spirits that are creating these instances across the country and the world. So, I mean, it's one of those things where I think it's not out of the realm of possibility. But, you know, to know for sure, I'm not sure, but it's one of those things where I think that it is definitely possible.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. There's been some cases Shane and I both have been on that have suggested that, hey, these spirits can be in multiple places. We don't know. And because we have gotten EVPs and stuff that relate to the same exact, you know, person or spirit, but from widely different places, one which has nothing to do with the story of the other. So it's like, why does that happen? But you know, if you look at the term searchers believe, I guess we believe and take, you know, put merit into the possibility of any of it. I don't think you can take the idea of a ghost and wrap it in this nice, you know, small box and put a bow on it. There's a lot of different reasons why the phenomenon occurs. Some I think is quantum physics. Some I think is spiritual. Some I think is, you know, created by the people that believe in it. But you know, that's our job, right? Is to try and go out there and understand why the phenomenon is happening.
Can you guys talk a little bit about the hive theory?
Oh man.
Do you guys know what that is?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
You want to go first, Shane, or you want me to?
No, you can go ahead, because I know you've been talking about this a lot lately anyway.
Yeah, it is kind of interesting you asked that. Again, I think that was all triggered by somebody asking a question about it. I was like, yes. So a lot of people out there, and you may know, of course, and I know you've been around in the paranormal. You have this idea of a tulpa, right? And the tulpa is created by the people that believe in it. So by that idea, you take enough people to believe in something, then it creates an entity based out of that. And Shane and I believe at this point have 100% witnessed that to an extent. And I don't want to go into great detail with it, but it had to do with, an old Masonic lodge and some of the communications that we had going on in that. And so absolutely, right? I mean, I think if you look at the world and you look at just the things that we know that are scientific fact, part of the reason we know all those things is because we all believe in them. And so I think hive mind absolutely exists. And scientifically it would make sense. I mean, you believe in if millions of people believe in a thing, then it doesn't matter. You kind of get to this idea of like, what's truly real, right? Does it matter if it's actually like physically there or not? Is the idea even factual? If, majority of the population believes in it, then you kind of have to just let it be real. I mean, I don't think you get a choice.
I kind of feel that way about the Bell Witch cave.
Yeah, absolutely.
I stayed a night in there before, but
ooh.
Oh, yeah. You stayed the night in there?
Yes.
We've been trying for a while since COVID has hit. It's been a real issue trying to get in there. Yeah, I mean, I could see that. And, that is a story that is deep rooted in history and, one family's like experience with it. So you take that and then let it grow in the minds of others, generationally, then yeah, I mean, I think it would make, if anything, just make that spirit stronger, I guess. How about you, Shane?
Yeah. And, with the hive mind, I kind of struggle with this, and we've seen the evidence for it in a lot of ways, but I kind of struggle with it because if you think about it, the millions of people that believe in some form of higher power, right, or a god. Well, if we put the idea of hive mind into effect, we have to entertain the thought that what if all of these people are creating that entity for themselves? What if that entity is not as real as what people are making it out to be? Not saying that's the case, but we've got to entertain that, especially if we're entertaining theories like the hive mind. So I struggle with that because then it goes back to what.
Does it make it less real though, Shane?
Well,
even if we create it.
Right. Well, it depends on what we define as reality at that point.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's why I struggle with it so much, because then you start to question what is real and what isn't.
Absolutely. That's a terrible road to go down.
Yeah.
It's like one that you're like, oh, I see the signs. Like, I know that it's like a thing. And like Shane said, we have the evidence to suggest that it's a thing on multiple occasions. But it opens up a whole bag of cats, if you will, because
bag of cats.
Yeah,
I've never heard of that before.
I haven't either. I'm from the South, and we say a lot of crazy things, but I've never heard bag of cats.
I'm sure in the course of this interview, you'll hear more things that no one else has ever said.
So if anybody doubted we were from the South, you don't doubt it now. but yeah, that's the thing, like that, just whenever you're entertaining those type of concepts, it's very hard, because like Josh was talking about, you go down these rabbit holes, and it's one of those things where it's like you start to question the reality of what it is, or even the reality that we're living now. How real is it? You know, I don't want to.
No, right? No,
it's kind of trippy. It's kind of trippy.
It is trippy. I mean, it starts bringing in the whole idea of us living in a simulation, right? I mean, that's the whole kit and caboodle about it, is that we have fabricated our own reality, and it's. But then you question, like, what is the definition of a reality? What's real? You know, is it real because we all just want to believe that this is what there is, or is it real because it's like a thing? You know, we didn't create it; it was there.
And just to touch on that real quick, you know, everything that we have created is from observations, right? So our civilization is all we've created based on what we've observed. So it begs the question then, if enough people believe something, does that make it true? Or what is truth? Like, even our ideas of science and the world beyond.
Oh yeah.
It all stems from our observations, the tools that we use, like the telescopes we use to see the worlds beyond, is all created by us. We're observing and making our theories about what we think the universe consists of and what this earth even consists of. But how do you know? What makes that true? Is it true because enough people are believing it to be true?
You know, Shane, recently,
it gives me a headache.
Me too. Well, I mean, kind of, you know, the older I get, the more it freaks me out, because it's like, I read something just the other day where, you know, our physical capability to see things and hear something are like fractions of what is actually out there. There is more energy surrounding us that we can't hear and we can't see and we can't use our senses for than there is on what we can. So in a lot of ways, the human body is just not designed to really know what is there. So that's kind of frightening. I mean,
yeah, that's bizarre.
And then if you know, look at, you know, space and stuff like that. I mean, just the simple concept of there's no end to any of it. Like, it's infinite, and that's infinite's a really big term.
Yeah.
Do you guys use, I don't know if I can say this correctly, lidar? Is it lidar?
Lidar? Yeah. So I used it when we were filming the Holzer Files. I used this device called the RAD 559. And basically it had the same type. It was kind of like a sonar, like a weather type device. And we had it hooked up to a tablet, and it mapped out the entire room based off. It was shooting the lidar, the lasers, and basically lidar. It's shooting a laser out and is trying to map out the distance between the objects that the laser is shooting out. It's kind of hard to explain, but yeah, we definitely use that, and I think it's interesting, and I think it warrants more research. To be honest, I mean, I think we've scratched the surface on some of this stuff, but I think it's interesting because this particular device, the RAD 559, it would map out the room, but it would also show you if any objects were moving, which I found very useful, because if you're in a dark room and you can't see anything, you can look down at the screen, you can see if there is any movement in that room. And it'll help you understand, okay, is there something going on? Is this something living? Is there a mouse or a rat or something in here? Or is this paranormal related? I think it's a cool tool that I think that we've just scratched the surface on in the paranormal space. But I'm excited to use more gear involving LiDAR, because I think it's interesting, and I think any tools at our disposal we need to try to use to try to figure out what's going on.
Yeah, I think that ties into a little bit, Shane, about how
the human body is only designed to be able to, see a certain bandwidth and to hear a certain hertz, ranges. The only way that we can get past that is to design things that can do that work for us. And I think lidar is a good example of that. Lidar is still, in my eyes, pretty new technology on what we're capable of doing with it, even outside of the paranormal. But one thing that really shines through is like it can do really well with like 3D mapping, right? So there's a possibility out there that it could see something that we don't see and map it for us. I think that I would like to see the technology get to that point to be used in the paranormal field.
Yeah.
So Josh has sent me a list of different locations for you guys to talk about. So I'm just going to let you guys share your experiences with some of these places. It's Union Springs Poly Jail.
Yeah. So that town is a beautiful town. It's a very small town, but it was a place where I pretty much had my start. Like some of my first paranormal experiences happened in that town. The Poly Jail is an interesting haunted location, and I do believe it is haunted because we've been there enough times to believe that. But there was a story involving a man, Aberdeen Johnson. Early 1900s, he was accused of some horrible crimes towards a woman. He was African American, so here in the South, it was during that time. It was, there was a lot of things going on, and he was accused of assaulting her, and her husband formed a lynch mob and came after Aberdeen Johnson, and he was in jail awaiting trial and everything, and they went to the Poly Jail and apprehended him. They actually threatened the sheriff, told him to get out of the way, busted through the doors.
They had the blacksmith actually cut the doors off the door to the jail and his jail cell to get him out.
Right. And so he was cowered in a corner, and he was pleading for his life. They drug him out of that jail, took him 2 miles. I believe it was west, 2 miles. Yeah, 2 miles east, and they strung him up by his wrist to a tree. And the article, there's still an article out there. You can research this. I think it was the Huntsville.
Yeah, it's pretty
Times. Old. And it says that his body was riddled with over 150 bullets.
Oh, wow.
So much so that his head was hanging by a strand of flesh because they shot him so many times. Basically, the mob, they said anybody that has issue with him, you can take your shot. So they just took turns shooting him. Horrific. So we asked the historian, who is very knowledgeable about the town and the Poly Jail, and we asked her, we're like, look, what are your thoughts about the Poly Jail being haunted? And she told us flat out, well, if anybody were to haunt the Poly Jail, it would be Aberdeen Johnson. And from our investigations and what we've done, we've determined that to be so.
Oh, yes.
It's such an interesting town. There's another place there in town called the Josephine Hotel, which is where I first saw my first full apparition. It freaked me out so bad I didn't want to stay up there because I knew nobody else was in that room, and I see this full apparition walk out of the room and kind of peek out and then walk back in. I thought somebody was in one of the rooms, and there was nobody there.
Was this something, did you see it straight on, or did you just was it from the corner of your eye kind of thing?
It was straight on. That's what freaked me out so bad. It was one of those things where I wanted to get out of there as quickly as I could. But yeah, first apparition that I've ever seen was there at the Josephine. And then from there, that's kind of what started our journey a little bit with me and Josh. One of the first places where we dug deep into the whole searchers idea.
Interestingly enough, I was supposed to be there the first time that he had went, and I didn't end up going.
Right. Yeah.
But so I remember the first time you took me out there, Shane. And this is, of course, several years later, past the point where he had been there. And on our ride out there, it's probably like an hour's drive from where Shane lives. I'm sitting there basically giving him a hard time. I'm like, man, really? This little gel freaks you out that much? Like, we've been to a lot of places. Like, I've been to like some pretty decrepit, horrible places, and you're terrified of this gel. But sure enough,
not to where I wasn't going to go.
No.
Yeah,
absolutely not. Right.
It freaked me out.
Yeah, but there was just, he had a ton of stories about it. He's like, man, I'm telling you, like, this place is scary, and I'm like, okay, whatever. And no, it definitely, I've been back several times since, but it has lived up to every bit of what he described. And it's a very, something that really stands out to me about the Aberdeen stuff and the fact that he's haunting the jail is that he didn't die there, right? So we talk about like omnipresent. I think that ties into it a little bit. He actually was killed a couple of miles, down the road from there, right outside the city. But then if you think about it and you put yourself in his shoes, and Shane and I agree on this, the jail was his life, last safe haven before the end of his life. And what kind of, and these jails are not very they're not suitable in our eyes for any kind of prisoner. I mean, I wouldn't want my worst enemy to have to stay in these jails. There's no AC, no heat,
the plumbing, there was no plumbing either. Not good plumbing.
So how scared did he have to be to where this jail was better than being outside of it? He was, that I think the definition of being terrified.
What time frame was this? Was this during the civil rights movement, or was it before?
This was in the early 1900s. I believe it was I can
look it up.
1912, I believe it was, somewhere around there.
Yeah, I think so, right? I think it's either, you might be right on the 1912.
So here's another one, Sweet Springs Sanatorium.
Oh, man.
Yeah. One of our most profound experiments that we've done was in Sweet Springs. Blew my mind. There's no other explanation other than, okay, there is something paranormal going on here, and I don't know how the hell this just happened, but it happened. Josh, go into
bit of, so there's a lot, kind of let me kind of get you hyped up for the story first off. So this was our first time actually going out with a camera crew, and we went with a very small crew. I'm fortunate to be friends with a lot of really good people in the industry that can make big creations with a small amount of, people. And so we had two guys come out, neither of which have ever done anything paranormal related. So we're like, man, we're the best place to do this. We have the opportunity to go out and check out Sweet Springs. Let's go film it. So we didn't write anything, didn't have a story, we were just pumped to be able to go to Sweet Springs. So we make that, it's like what, an 8-hour drive or something, Shane? And so we make that.
It was something ridiculous.
Yeah, some insane drive. We make that drive, stay at an Airbnb. We're all staying at the Airbnb, and we get ready to go out to Sweet Springs. And as we're going out there, it's like, hey, we're not, they're telling me, hey, there's no electricity here except for, one room. And it's freezing too. So this is in November and it's freezing there. And then on top of that, it's like you have no cell service there either. And they have no Wi-Fi. And so like you're truly there alone. So here we are with Shane, me, the two camera people, Bobby and Isaiah, and then our third person at the time, Ray Causey. And so you have 5 of us in this like just completely gigantic sanitarium. It's just huge. And this place has a lot of really cool history there. It used to be a resort. George Washington's been there. General Lafayette's been there. And it's kind of changed hands throughout history. And at one point was used as a sanitarium, And so we do an experiment that's called the Estes method, but we like to change it up a bit. And for people that don't know what the Estes method is, basically you put noise canceling headphones on, you put a blindfold on, and you hook a spirit box to it. And what a spirit box does, it rapidly scans through radio frequencies, creates a lot of white noise. And so you'll ask questions and you'll get words back. So you have one person sitting there, can't see, can't hear anything other than the white noise coming from the spirit box. And so there's this one particular area in Sweet Springs where there's 2 joining rooms, but they're only joined by like a sight glass. And it was because on one side you would have the doctors and stuff, and they would actually be, watching and taking notes of their patients on the other side of it. And I think it was like, I could be wrong, I think it was like dementia patients for this particular spot. So we sat Ray's the guy doing the Estes method on one side, blindfolded him, did all of that stuff, closed the door, sat me in the other room, and we're kind of just facing the glass, but we can't see each other because we're blindfolded, right? And then instead of me having a spirit box, I just had white noise going through my headphones, right? So I can't hear anything because I have the white noise, can't see anything. It's dark. We don't have electricity. So we're just sitting there, and we got 2 cameras set up, one set up on Ray in night vision, one set up on me, and we're just sitting in chairs. And basically our idea, which goes far outside the Estes experiment at this point, is to not only will he be doing the Estes experiment, but I'll be asking questions where I'm not susceptible to any outside like suggestions. I'm just asking questions. I have no idea if he is answering or not. And I remember sitting in that chair thinking, wow, this sounded good on paper, but this is real stupid. Like, what do you ask? And so, we're sitting there, and then, in this instance, the camera guys and Shane are sitting outside in the hall. And so they are what I would like to call the witness of the experiment, right? So they're seeing it real time. And so I'm asking questions like, hey, we're just wanting to talk. We're trying to understand what's going on here. What's happening? And then not unbeknownst to me, Ray's on the other side and he's answering questions. And there's this one profound moment for all of us where Ray says, ready, watch. And then something touches me on my shoulder and I jump up thinking that it was Shane or one of them, coming to get me. I was like, and then I quickly realized that there's nobody there. And I'm like, hey, something just touched me. And Shane came in and he was like, oh my God, because he witnessed it, he's like, he just said, watch and record. Like, and then like not seconds later, I'm saying somebody touched me on the shoulder. And still, and Ray's still inside the experiment, right? Has no idea that any of this is going on. We're not in his room. And so Shane's asking me at this moment, he's saying, hey, can you do this a little bit longer? I was like, yeah, it just kind of freaked me out. And I felt like the room got darker. And so we did that. And I go to start putting my blindfold and everything back on. And then we start hearing Ray in the other room start yelling and say, hey, what's going on? And so we go in there just in time to hear this spirit box start making this like really screechingly high pitched noise, and to the point where he couldn't keep the headphones on anymore. And basically what happened is the spirit box fried itself.
Oh, like wow.
Dead. I've had that particular spirit box I had is the SB7, the standard. And
I've had that one for years, and it just overheated and died. And matter of fact, we could never get it to work again. I had to get new ones. But all of that stuff happened in the span of like a minute, maybe, And so you got Shane out there, like he's already like floored as to what's going on. But then the camera guys are like, what is happening? You know what I mean?
So, oh yeah. Well, yeah, and the camera guys, it was their first times. It was their first times witnessing something like this. Yeah. So to see their reactions made it even more memorable for me.
First off, Shane and I would never, fake anything. But second of all, it's like, how would you even fake that? I mean, you can't.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. Such a cool experience.
That's the other thing is, yeah.
Yeah, and like I said, even if it seems hokey and bizarre, just listen. Yeah, and not just that, but you don't have to adopt their whole.
And I think the whole idea of searchers too is that Shane and I have said it from the beginning is that we're all a searcher. If you're doing this stuff for one reason or another, you're a searcher. And so it's not just about us. We've done a lot of live investigations because we do want these people to play a part in our decision making.
So that's an amazing location.
I mean, we owe it to them to like do it justice too. So it's like,
well, you guys, thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you.